Hello, it's been a while since I made a video, maybe a few weeks. That's because I've been involved in moving house, and you can see by the boxes behind me that I've not unpacked everything yet, although I'm in the new place. And that whole process of moving, everything that involves, that's what prompted the idea for this short talk today. So I'm calling it, Who Do You Think You Are? And optimistically I'm going to say this is part one, because I think there's quite a bit to say on the subject of who we think we are, who we think our self is, if anything. So that's what I'm going to be exploring. And in the first part today, I'm going to talk particularly about how we identify with things. So this is to do with identification, self-identification. These days we often have to show ID for various things. We need to have things like a driving license or a passport or some kind of letter that has our name and address on it, and those things we identify very strongly with the information which is on those ID documents. Our driving license shows our name and our address, and our name and address are things which we identify with very much. So we think we are what it says our name is, and maybe we even think we are what our address is as well, the house we live in. And also we have many possessions, most of us do. Some of us live fairly simply, but generally in this society that we live in, we tend to have quite a few possessions. And again, we identify very strongly with those possessions. A few months ago, I read John Steinbeck's novel Grapes of Wrath, and somewhere fairly near the beginning of that, when the Joad family realise they have to get off the land, they have to take everything with them, and they go off on the road, heading for California. And they can't take all their possessions with them because they have to get it all in a small truck. And also there's quite a few of them, can't remember how many of them, 7 or 8, maybe 9 of them, the people, and all their things. And they've lived on the land in that particular house for generations, and they identify very strongly with it. And they've probably got lots of things they've accumulated there over the years, many things to do with working on the land. But they discover quite quickly that they can't take everything with them. So they have to decide, well, what do we most need or what do we most want to take with us? And some things they have to sell and they get terrible prices for them, and other things they just leave there. And in this process of sorting out what they're going to take and what they're going to leave, one of them says, I can't remember the exact words, but one of them says something like, if we don't take everything with us, how will we know it's us? If we don't take everything with us, how will we know it's us? So this shows so strongly how much we identify with our possessions, our things, almost as though we would have no identity or no self if we didn't have any things surrounding us, if we didn't have our familiar objects. When I was preparing to move house, it was a great opportunity to get rid of some things. And I did that. I got rid of quite a few things, And because my den here is an attic room, you can see by the shape of the ceiling behind me it slopes. I had to leave behind some tall units which I had in my previous room. So I'm having to get different things, storing my things lower down rather than higher up. So those things have gone now. They've disappeared out of my life. I'm quite easy with that. I've still got most of the contents of those shelves. Someone said to me that, oh, well, you're a Buddhist, so you probably don't have very much to move. Ha ha. I'm a long way from having just one robe and one bowl. I live in a house. Most of us live in houses. We need things. We have things. But it's a question of how much we identify and how much we attach to those objects. When I was unpacking things here the other day, there were a number of, lots of things that I hadn't seen for a couple of weeks because they've been packed away in boxes. And when I was bringing them out of the boxes, of course I was recognising things. Oh, that's where that went to. Haven't seen that for a while. And there was a mixture of feelings about the particular things I was taking out. Like, for example, my CDs. I have pruned my CD collection quite a bit, but I've still got lots. And I was taking them out and thinking, oh great, there's that CD, I can listen to that again. And so there was a certain pleasure with the familiarity of it. But also there was this sinking feeling, all this stuff, I'm still carrying around all this stuff with me from house to house. So there's a mixture of feelings there. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't have any possessions, because our lifestyles, we need certain possessions, don't we? I'm sure we could all simplify much more. I could simplify much more. But there's nothing wrong, really, with having things. The question is, how much do we identify with our things? Do we think that we would be incomplete if we didn't have all our things? How would it be for us if we suddenly found ourselves in a bare room with nothing around us? It would be strange, wouldn't it? When I had got most of my things packed up at the old place before I left, I was still sitting there meditating. But instead of having a shrine with the Buddha image and so on in front of me, I was just surrounded by, I think I had about 15 boxes in the room where I usually meditate. A very different experience, an experience which shows the changing nature of things. And although I and all of us have all these possessions, really we don't own anything. We can't really own anything. We can't appropriate those things into our being, as it were. They're not really part of us, although they are very much part of our lives. But we don't take them with us when we die. So there's no point really in having an over-attached idea about them, having an over-identification with them. It's really like trying to own the sky or own the clouds in the sky. We can't do that. Clouds and sky are ungraspable. So too are all the things that we have. So too is our self, or our sense of self. There's nothing really that we can grasp onto and say, this is myself. So, who do we think we are? In the end, ultimately, we're a flow, we're part of a process of things, moment by moment, things happening around us, things changing, things in a state of flux. Our mind isn't our head or our brain. The brain is just certain functions. There's much more to the mind than brain. But I'm going to not pursue that any further right now. I'll try and pursue it in another video in the next few days. So meanwhile, here's a few thoughts about identification with objects, with things, with possessions, and a few thoughts on the subject of who do we think we are?